name any names, but there was one guy that I saw in like OBJ, and
Yeah.
like they did this article about some of the stuff that he was doing, found his info online, reached out to him, hey, like, can we just like meet? I just want to like pick your brain.
Yep.
And most of the time, what I've seen is that people that are in a certain position, whether it's monetary or business or financial or professional success, generally they will like at least meet once,
Yep.
right? And then if they realize, okay, this was just like a one hit wonder, this kid just wanted to have
Yeah.
coffee and pick my brain and get something. I think in those relationships, like we have to, when we're seeking out people like that, we have to try to give some value. And I think as long as those individuals that we're seeking out understand and see that we're like trying to give some
Yeah.
value.
They know you don't know what you're doing,
Right.
like, because they were you whenever that was,
Right.
and so they're not. I mean, I get it all. Like sometimes now people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to meet with you." Like, I don't think I've ever said no.
Welcome to Beyond the Blueprint, powered by Contractors, Closers, and Connections, Orlando. Join me for in-depth interviews with some of the top commercial real estate and development executives in the industry. We uncover their success stories, their strategies, and their lessons learned along the way. Gain valuable insight whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. Welcome Beyond the Blueprint. We are sitting down here with a friend of mine, Adam Wonis. Adam, I appreciate you being on here. It's
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure to get to know you and get to kind of see some of the things that you're doing, especially here in Orlando and in Central Florida. So I'm glad we got time to chat and
I appreciate you having me.
yeah, let you introduce yourself, who you with, what you do, and what you're about.
Yeah, so my name's Adam Wanis. I'm with Atrium Management Company. On Atrium side, we are a property management and development company. Started in 2014, actually at the end of 14. So we really kind of consider 2015 our first year of operation. But yeah, great company. Love Central Florida originally. Grew up in Ohio, so I moved here right after college.
I got a lot of Ohio guys.
Yes, we usually leave Ohio. Ohio's got the greatest people in the world, and in my opinion.
Yeah.
But obviously it's cold and gray, good chunk of the year. And so came to Florida.
Yeah. So when did you come to Florida?
So it started out, my mom was living in Delray Beach, Florida, and I was there during college on a Christmas break, and I was sitting on the beach on Christmas morning in shorts, and I thought, why would I not be here?
Right. This makes total sense.
The day I graduated, I packed my car up and I drove here. I actually got here through banking, Fifth Third Bank's a bank out of Ohio. I was supposed to start in their retail management training program, and they said you could go to Orlando. And I had a friend from college who was coming here, so it was just by chance. I said, Orlando sounds great. I got here and they actually canceled the program that I was supposed to be a part of. So I just signed a lease for an apartment, which at the time was a lot of money to me. And
Still is.
They basically offered, now it's even more. I don't know how kids are doing today, but they offered me to be a teller. And I'm like, well, you guys had me here for some other type of program. And so long story short, I found a job. I went to the Chamber of Commerce and I started looking up. I had a guy tell me to learn how money works if you want to be in real estate, and that will help you throughout your career. So I knew I wanted to be in finance, and I found a company here called Mercantile Capital, and it was a small nationwide lender, and I found them on the Chamber of Commerce. I went in and interviewed with them, and the CEO hired me to do marketing website updates. And for those people who know me, I know nothing about technology till this day. And I remember him asking me, he's like, can you do that? I'm like, of course I can.
The answer is yes, and I'll figure it out.
Yes.
Right?
So I did that. And I remember, actually, it's really funny. The gentleman, Trey Colson, I worked with, he was my first boss. He actually works with me today. And so I kind of tell all the guys at the company and people at the company, I'm like, Trey had to deal with me not knowing anything and pretending like I did. So I just sat in his office and he was kind enough to help me kind of get through. But that was how I got my foot in the door to the bank, was just doing marketing updates. And I ended up bothering the CEO every single day, asking if I could underwrite deals. And, not to get in the weeds on that, but one of the ways that kind of helped me was, he had taught me about, working overtime, essentially. Not, overtime is not the right word, but working extra. And so we were lending across the entire country. So I would do my regular job from 9 to 5, and then California was still open for business. So I would call all of these banks out in California that would need our loan program or different borrowers. But I had 3 extra hours to make those phone calls. And it ended up being a really pivotal part of my career, having that base of California,
Right.
Texas lending, and Texas was a little further behind us as far as time goes
Sure.
as well. That's how I kind of got my foot in the door. And I finally did one deal, and they were like, okay, they're like, we'll let you be an underwriter now.
So was that doing the work in California and Texas, was that something that you think like you really understood how to get to the next level and to be able to transition in your career?
I think what I
Or at least at the bank.
Yeah, I think what I just had so much energy at the time, and I'm a high intensity person, so I had so much energy. I wanted to be successful so bad that I just didn't know what I didn't know. So
Right.
I would get on the phone, and I remember, and we're trying to finance commercial property for business owners, and I'm 21 years old,
Right.
and I'm calling about a loan that I really don't know anything about.
To a
No one's
64-year-old guy.
Yeah, no one's helping me. No one's saying no one's cheering me on saying, yeah, you can do this.
Sure.
They wanted me to do marketing updates.
Right.
And so I had some really great people, Tony Zara in Mercantile. He helped me. He was a little bit older than I was. And so when I finally got people on the phone, I would run in his office and be like, I got one.
Mhm.
And then he would jump on and help. And kind of get me through.
So when you were in college, did you like know you wanted to be in finance? Was like that like the mindset, or did you ever know that you wanted to be in real estate at all, or was it just kind of something that organically transitioned?
So I always say the problem with me starting out is I was born poor, and I didn't really have anyone in my life that was in real estate per se.
Mhm.
But my mom, who's an amazing person and just the most work ethic of anyone you've ever come across, didn't go to college. I was raised just by her, so it was the two of us, and I just watched that work ethic. It was
Sure.
ridiculous. And so she actually worked her way up in a company called Longenberger, and she ran a sales team of 10,000 ladies.
No way.
And so I always say I was raised by 10,000 women across the country, because she would take me with her to all these sales training and sales conferences, and she would sit me in the back of the room. I would listen,
Right.
understand some really cool, different ways of selling. But we were always doing it at hotels and these really nice resorts. And
Conferences.
we were poor. And so when you're at a hotel, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Like, you're just part of the
Right.
process. And the way that a hotel and the people in there would treat you was really cool to me at that age, especially around 9 years old. I remember telling my mom, I'm going to own hotels. And so I had that in my head from 9. I'm going to own hotels. I had no idea how to do that. And, I always tell people, when you're 9-year-old telling someone that, they smile at you and say, oh, that's so fantastic.
Right.
When you get to about 18, 25, 35, they start doubting you.
Yeah.
Like, that's not possible. And they start giving you all the negative reasons. But long story short, I read a book many people have read called Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 19 years old. And I thought, holy crap, I found the secret. And I'm like, man, I can't believe this guy published this book. Everybody's going to do this.
Right.
Like, it just made sense to me as to how you could acquire assets.
Right.
And then when I went to the bank, I remember telling the chairman of my bank, I want to own a hotel. And he said, that's the stupidest asset you could own. And I was like, why? I mean, it's so great. And he's like, I own industrial buildings. It's the safest bet.
Right.
Now, 10 years at a bank started making me a little concerned about owning a hotel, because I'm like, I understand how the finances work.
Yeah.
But I learned the process of what I needed to do.
Sure.
And so I have this ultimate dream to this day of owning one hotel. I don't want, like, everybody's like, do you want to be in hotel operations? Like, no, I just want to accomplish a childhood dream, to be honest with you. I want it to be successful, obviously.
Right.
But it doesn't matter to me if it comes today or it comes 20 years from now. Like, we will have a hotel, built at some point.
So that transition from the bank to getting into real estate, what did that look like?
So I just had the entrepreneurial spirit. So I had a lot of great people around me. There was a gentleman named Chris Hearn who ran Mercantile, and we were financing franchises all over the country. And so another local person here I met with was Eric Holm, who owns Golden Corrals. Mm-hmm. And so I was financing franchises. I started looking at the financial statements of different operators, how they were doing it. The beautiful thing about working at a bank is you get to see exactly what everyone's doing.
Right.
Instead of people walking around town telling you, oh, I do X, Y, and Z. It's like,
right.
Nope, here's your tax returns, here's your personal financial statement. And so you get a little bit of a blueprint as to what a successful operation looks like. So I remember reaching out to Eric and I said, hey, I want to be like you someday. Will you meet me? And I met him in a Golden Corral in Altamont, Florida. And he just kind of explained to me how he got started. And I think that's one of the greatest things about people who are successful, their willingness to help you. And so he talked to me. He started as a busboy at a Sonny's barbecue in Gainesville, Florida.
Wow.
And so he kind of walked me through that. So I'm financing franchises, and I'm like, I got to buy my own. So I'm working at the bank, and I
Screw the hotel.
Well,
No.
I knew the steps you had would be
Yeah.
so monstrous. So I'm like, what can I do? And I remember like Moe's Southwest Grill was popular back then. And I thought, oh, I can't do a Moe's because I'm working at the bank. And so I was like, let's do a barber shop. I found a tax return for a barber shop, a franchise barber shop. So I